to share some tips. Little Metal Foxes Tool Tips with Jennifer and Julia. Here we go. Let's do some wax carving. Let's do some tool tips about wax carving. Here we go. Hi, it's me, Jennifer from Little Metal Foxes, and
Julia from Little Metal Foxes.
that's right. And I've got a noodle here as well.
Noodle from Little Metal Foxes.
The noodle from Little Metal Foxes. Here he is. There's his little nose.
And I had Maggie in here, which is why I'm probably going to continue to be rubbing my nose for this entire episode because she was in here just like clouds of floof. Clouds of flippin' floof.
It's like a dandelion. Make a wish.
I swear. I mean, every time I would breathe in to say something, I feel I just got a snoot full of floof. Anyway.
Well, her hair is, 5 inches long. So
crazy. It's crazy pants. Crazy pants. Medium hair, my butt. She was billed as a medium hair when we adopted her. No way.
There's the noodle. There's the noodle.
There he is.
There he goes. Yeah. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the wax carving tools just to get started with wax carving and waxwork, because I think some people have a misconception about how much you need to invest to get started doing wax carving. And there really is not a big investment in tools and equipment just to get started. If you're
what? They're probably just traumatized from the amount of tools that you need for everything else in jewelry making, right?
Right.
So, I mean, you kind of have to be a tool nerd to make jewelry, but you don't have to be a tool nerd to carve wax. And carving wax is jewelry. It's very centrally jewelry related, but it's a different animal from
I know people that carve wax and don't do any of the other
this other stuff, right?
They're exclusively doing wax carving, and they have their favorite tools that they have made out of things like broken drill bits, broken saw blades, old X-Acto knives, and those are like their go-to tools. And those things are not expensive, right? They're not hard to get. They are, just easy to get it. Any of the, probably have them in the house. Go through your junk drawer. I know people that have used like old paper clips to make tools for wax carving. So, I mean, you really don't need a very tool heavy assortment to be able to start carving waxes and to start working in wax, because I mean, again, this is a technical skill that jewelers have been doing for 6,000 years, and it was done sitting around the fire and working with mud and clay. It's just the principles of this are very low tech, it's very inexpensive, and can be highly accurate as to what you're getting out of it on the other end. I mean, to the detail of a fingerprint, it can be so detailed, but you don't have to invest like an entire, half your fortune to be able to, set up the casting facilities and all of that. There are lots of casting services around. So if you want to make lost wax castings, you can find a service that will cast those things for you really easily. They're all over the jewelry industry, and you can get it cast.
You can ship them. It doesn't have to be local, right? Like you can ship waxes to people. Yeah.
So, I mean, for like $25, you can, I mean, if you're investing in like some wax carving tools or tools that you can use in your studio or sitting around your kitchen table, you don't even have to have a jewelry studio to do wax carving. You just need like a clean surface, and that's it. So I just want to encourage those people that have, either are sort of starting and work very sculpturally, or want to, they're like, I can't figure out how to do this by soldering a piece of flat sheet and wire together. There is a world of metal out there that is not fabricated. And I was saying this earlier on our Instagram feed, my first introduction to the Metals and Jewelry Studio was through casting, lost wax casting. I had no idea how to cast. I had no idea how to use any of the tools in the jewelry studio. I mean, a hammer, but I mean, I didn't know how to thread a saw blade. I didn't know how to do, any of that, really like jewelry latent skills. But I was doing mixed media stuff and working with the sculpture wax and making pieces that I wanted to have cast. I was making some molds of pieces and then getting, you know, waxes out of those, making like slush molds. So that was my introduction to metals and jewelry. I didn't know how to solder on jump rings. So all the
Mhm.
rings and attachments that I had to have, I had to plan those out and do them in wax. And I was doing them in a sculpture wax, so not even carving. So it was like into the sculpture. Um, so there are, I know there are people out there that can be very intimidated and overwhelmed with the amount of jewelry technology that does go into the high end jewelry stuff.
Mhm.
I mean, it really, you know, is amazing. A lot of stuff now is being done through, you know, computer aided design,
Yeah.
whether it is, you know, cut out, you know, lasered out, stereolithography, 3D printed. You know, there's lots and lots of options on the high end level of making a model.
Mhm.
And there are some people that design on the computer and never touch wax. They
Right.
just design it on the computer, send it to the people that print stuff out and cast it, and then they get a finished piece back. So it's like, you know, and so it's good to know the basics of what this is, because the basics of what wax casting is been around for 6,000 years. So looking at some of my favorite tools, I just wanted to share that with you because most of these are under, you know, a whole lot of money. They're under, you know, 25 bucks um, collectively. But I know you've got some too, Julia, but I've got like a little basket of stuff. But this one, these two tools are, you know, my two go-tos here. I've got two X-Acto knives that I use for a bunch of stuff. These are my go-tos for, you know, scraping, cleaning, getting detail in. Um, and we've got, here we go. Woo. Yeah, so I've got X-Acto knives. Those are one of my go-to tools. The nice thing about the X-Acto knives, Julia, is that
Mhm.
when you are working with them, as they start to get dull, you can actually um, manipulate the blade and make a whole new wax carving tool out of an old X-Acto blade. So what
Mhm.
you do is anneal the blades. So you want to heat them up red hot and then put them in some sand or something that can get those annealed, right? Let them cool
Mhm.
slowly.
Mhm.
Then you can saw, file, and shape these into whatever tool you need. You know, so if you have something that you need a rim, you can actually use your standard metal files to just carve into the steel and make it whatever shape you need it to be. This is really handy because these things are, you know, just pennies for a pack, right? Rather
Right.
than
Right.
hundreds of dollars for specialized tools when you can make your own. And the same is true for like old drill bits. Some of my favorite tools are like old drill bits that have been, you know, repurposed for wax carving tools.
Or
So
broken. I mean, dental tools originally their shapes can be really good, but some dental tools are really, really, really long and thin and pointy, and they're not as good as like if you break that off and
right,
then use
right,
the
right.
part of
So
the shank that's below that. Yeah.
yes, so some of my favorite dental tools are ones that I have repurposed for different things. I do, you know, some of these are great because you can use them hot or cold, using, you know, like a flame or something to heat the ends so you can work
Mhm.
hot or cold. So these are not very expensive. Some of my favorite ones, I know you'd mentioned this earlier, are, you know, anything that has like a little blade or a scoop on it. And
Mm.
some people will sharpen this with like just a knife sharpening stone so they can
Mhm.
do scraping. A lot of times these have like a little scoop or something, like a little paddle on the other end. And those are fantastic. And you can usually get those on eBay or Amazon for, you know, a few bucks. They're not expensive.
Right.
Um, but one of my other favorite go-tos is this fabulous thing. This is a double-ended pen vise, and the pen vices have four different sized collets in them, and the collets will hold a number of different tools, like a drill bit shank and polishing tools. And I usually use things like craft needles in here,
Mhm.
and just a craft needle to, you know, as a burnisher or, you know, for all kinds of things. and you can even store bits on the inside. So this gives you 4 different options for holding things. But what I do a lot of times for wax carving is put in a broken saw blade. And this is like a number.
I love this. I love this idea because it's so simple, and it also it just gives you the tool, the right scale for the work you're doing.
Right. So this, I put this in so it works like a little push saw. So I can to my wax and do really accurate cuts. A lot of times if you're using a straight blade with the waxes, the heat of the friction moving back and forth can heat the saw blade up, and then it can lock it, just freeze around the saw blade, and then you're stuck, and you have to heat the blade up to get it back out of the wax. But this is really kind of nice because I can get into small areas and use it. I'll use this almost like a push saw. So I'll just sort of saw into a small area, small corners, little areas that I need to clean up. And this is a really accurate little tool. I mean, the pen vices are like, a couple of bucks. A broken saw blade's already lived its life usually. So having a coarse one like that is really helpful. But yeah, those are some of my favorite tools. Other things that I like are just like, little toothpicks or this is actually, I think, a little manicure.
Orange stick for,
exactly. Little wooden dowels work great because they work as a burnishing tool on wax and they don't cut it too terribly badly. X-Acto makes all kinds of like carving tools as well. So, having something that, if I'm sawing a bigger piece, something like this can be handy. And there usually is a number of different carving tools in a set like this that you can pick up and use for wax carving. But one of the things I recently found that I really like, Julia, are these guys. And I like these because I can use them for manipulating sculpture wax. And some of them this came in a set with a whole bunch of these little soft brushes.
But are they like silicone shapers? Is that kind of what they are?
Yeah. So they have
I see. Yeah.
Silicone end on one end and like a little steel burnisher on the other. And these are used a lot for working with polymer clay. And little clay tools work great for wax. So if you're doing even some sculptural wax or wax carving, harder wax, it can be really helpful for sort of carving in and burnishing a line.
Nice.
Yeah, something, a little spatula tool like that is really helpful for building up, melting, and little brushes like that for brushing away fine fibers. But, even a little handful of tools like this is, a couple of bucks. An X-Acto knife's a couple of bucks. And if you need something to do some hot work, I mean, the Max Wax is like 18 bucks. You've got instant heat, but, and there's all kinds of hot tools that get more expensive than this, but just using something like, a dental tool over a tea light or over an alcohol lamp works great if you're doing, some hot work, melting some wax, putting wax down. So
I love that you could just do a tea light, right? Then you don't have to have the alcohol. You don't have to, because the alcohol lamps, if you're not using them very often, that always evaporates out. Yes. They can be kind of fussy, and it's like really all you need is a candle flame. So if you have a tea light, that works great.
Well, and some places like California, you can't even get denatured alcohol. So it's, a hard material to come by. So if you just got a flame, that works great.
Right.
This little pack.
You have a scented candle in your studio where you're carving your wax, and you can have, pine scent or sandalwood or jasmine to go with your whatever you're carving.
Yeah, even working at your kitchen table, you've got like a little candle going and carving some wax. I like these files for wax carving are great. They're little diamond files, and so these are really great for doing some detail work in wax. But I know you've got quite a nice little assortment there too. You've taken a class with me, and
I do. I mean, mostly what I have is stuff you recommended, and so I have like the cheapo wood rasp, which keeps pulling the plastic apart. Cheapo wood rasp from the hardware store, which has 4 different kind of grits on it. And
It's
I
kind of
mean, the really coarse
round.
ones are probably less useful, I'm guessing. But, if you really want to hog off material quickly, that it will do that.
It
And,
will. Yeah.
then having the little teeth be so far apart means it's easy to clean. You can just brush it with a toothbrush and it gets all the bits of wax off. It
Right.
doesn't gum it up. So, I mean, and this was super cheap, right? I think, hardware
Right. I
store.
think
And
I paid
then
maybe
I
$4.
have I have dental tools. A friend of mine's a dentist and she gave me some, but you don't even have to, hit your dentist up. So it's good reason to go to your dentist, go get your teeth cleaned, and then ask your hygienist, like, do you have any old tools? And they always do. They
Yeah.
always have a box of old tools. And so if you're like, could I, do you have any you
Yeah.
want to get rid of?
Yeah.
Because you can
Yeah.
always alter them.
Yeah.
Like I said, I have a number that are super pointy and they're too pointy. It's like a needle, and it's like I don't need. It's too flexible and too pointy because the purpose is for to be flexible and pointy, and for me, I needed to be more stable. So you can just snap them off and just reshape the end or whatever you want it to be.
Right. Right.
I was saying before, I like the ones. Some dental tools have two ends, have the
Yes.
same shape on both ends, and you know, that can be a bit problematic if you're like leaning over something. You don't want to. I always worry I'm going to poke myself in the eye, so I actually prefer having the ones that just have one end, right? I mean,
Yeah.
this one has a super delicate tip on it, and I think you can see it's been bent a couple times. I think it's been bent and bent back, and I'm like, maybe it's time to just snap it off.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
like the
And
ones that just
nice
have
thing about the old
don't have
dental.
anything here because then I don't poke myself.
Right, right. Like I was saying, I prefer those too because I've had so many times when I've reached in to get a tool and haven't seen the sharp, pointy, double-ended one and
Sticking
jabbed it
out.
in the hand.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah.
You can
Uh,
tell these were actually from an actual dentist because they have the little rubber, they have them color coded by what type they are and what they do.
right.
So I didn't pull all that off from
But
my
the
friend
nice thing
Kate.
about the
Thank you,
old
Kate.
dental tools is you can adapt them for different
Right.
things. So you can, cut them down and grind them down and make them into the tool that you want it to be, like the X-Acto knives.
Exactly.
And like I said, most people that I know that are really lifelong experienced wax carvers that have been doing it for, 60, 70 years. And I
They
actually
have
know
their
some,
broken saw blade that they,
yes,
reach for all the time. Yep.
yep, their go-to tools are the X-Acto knives that they have customized
Mm-hmm.
or drill bits that they have customized. Like they'll use the other end because the
Mm.
steel is really hard and they can put it into something like a pen vise and they can adapt it into this beautiful carving tool just by, sanding it down and shaping it the way they want it to be. And those are some of the best tools around. Um, and it's not, you don't have to invest, a lot of money to get good tools. Now, don't get me wrong, because I will tell you, one of the things that did rock my world when I first, used them is Kate Wolf's carving tools. They're brilliant tools,
Right.
but it's, $150 for a set. And
You
so
don't need
they,
those to start with.
oh,
Like you're not good
absolutely.
enough. You're not good enough to be able to get the juice out of a set of Kate Wolf tools. Get some practice under your belt. Then when you
Yeah.
buy those tools, you'll be like, oh yeah,
Oh, I see. Yeah.
then it will elevate your work because
Well, and it's
not that I'm
amazing
saying you shouldn't support Kate Wolf right off the bat, but you don't
I,
need to do $150 worth of tools just to
we
get
love
into.
we love Kate. Mwah,
It.
Kate,
We love Kate. Her work is amazing. Her tools are just
brilliant. Yeah.
delicious and brilliant.
Absolutely brilliant. So, but using things that you've got around you, using, whatever, sharp, pointy things that you've got. I've used things like tubing when I've needed to carve like a really specific shape. I've like altered a piece of tubing that I can, like brass tubing,
Take a
that I
little
can
scoop.
scoop things out with. So there's
Nice.
all kinds of just stuff that's, scrap metal that's in your studio that you can adapt and change into the perfect tool for wax. You don't have
Right.
to have, you know, the expensive stuff, right?
So take the wax carving class to
Yeah,
get some ideas of what things you might want to make and how you could go about doing that and what tools you could inexpensively acquire or adapt to do that.
right,
And then,
right.
and that class is actually coming up after your mold making class. So your mold making class is coming first, but that's fine.
Yeah.
You guys can do
And
it out of order.
mold making too is one of those things that it's I think a lot of people are like, oh, I'm not planning on doing that many. And it's like, you can use wax, you can use the molds to take impressions of natural objects to
Hmm.
mold things that are going to be one of a kind that you can have cast. So if you're like walking through, walking down the beach and you see a rock that's got a thing on it, you can actually use two-part mold material, take an impression, pour
Of those
wax.
barnacles, right?
Yeah, so there's all kinds of really cool ways that you
Yeah,
can use mold making to make one of a kind pieces that
right.
are amazing, So yeah. So
Well,
mold making.
I love
Yep.
seeing you pop that little sea urchin wax out of the sea urchin mold. I mean, that's just so satisfying. And then I know that one of the things you've done is cut that, right? You didn't cast it as a whole sea urchin. You cut it into pieces and use pieces of the texture in other things, or you can roll it up or whatever, right? Like you
Yeah,
were
and Helen uses the mold making, the same mold making material, the RTV material, for taking molds of natural objects and all kinds of things that she's carved and made, and using that for things like
saying.
glass.
Right.
So there's so many applications for the mold making itself that you can use it for candies and wax and because it's food safe. But they
Make
make
a mold of the sea urchin, and then you could make a metal sea urchin, wax sea urchin to make a metal one, or you can make a chocolate sea urchin. Yeah,
sea urchin and chocolate. Yum.
fill it with
But
cream,
yeah,
with sea
don't
urchin eggs.
but don't be too intimidated by, the wax carving because it seems too expensive or it seems like it's a whole nother ball of wax that you
Wax.
might suck in.
Um, saw what you did there.
But there's all kinds of ways to use it that can break you away from the fabrication, stuff where you're trying to like solder a ring together with sheet and wire, and it's very limiting, in terms of the shapes that you can get and what you can do. And when you're working with metal, that's what you've got. Those are your options. When you're working with wax, you can work three-dimensionally.
Right,
You
you
can
make any
work
shape you want,
hexagonally.
and then
Yeah.
add that to your fabricated piece.
Add stuff, yeah. So you can do, uh, make a ring, fabricate a ring that you want to use for your basis of a series, and make a
Hmm.
mold of that, and then do engraving, do a stone setting, and that's kind of your thing. Or make a piece, you've got a found object that you love, like maybe an acorn cap, and you can make a mold of the
Or
acorn.
like Annie's piece of coral that she just loved,
Cool.
right?
Yeah.
One of our students has this kind of coral shape. It's this three-dimensional shape, and she made a mold of it, and then she actually did some magic to make a mirror image too,
Altered the mold. Yeah. She
and
altered the
altered
wax.
the mold, and yeah, took a wax from the original mold, altered that, made another mold so that she would have mirror image pieces. But there, and then she's going to make, her whole plan is to make a necklace that involves the original piece of coral and cast silver pieces that look
Of the
like,
same.
yeah,
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
same shape. It's
So
really
it's
quite lovely.
absolutely. So in working with natural objects, or like I said, you can take some of the stuff, people that hike, people that are just, if you're out and about and you're like, that's a really cool texture. I want that in my work. You can
Right,
actually take an impression of that in minutes
right.
and turn it into a wax that you can use. But the possibilities of what you can use the wax molds for are so incredibly adaptive that it's amazing. So whether you're doing resins or wax or glass or all kinds of things, candy, you've got lots of options with the
Got
molds.
lots of options. Polymer clay, you know.
Yep, yep, absolutely.
Yep.
All right, Julia,
It was good to see you.
good to see you.
Fun
We
to
need to
talk about. Fun to
do
talk
some
about
more
wax
wax
tools.
carving.
What?
Yeah,
Yeah.
do more wax carving. Yay! All right, everybody. Thanks a lot. Make sure you hit that like button real quick. Hit it now. Are you hitting it? Are you liking it? Bing, thank you. And ring the bell, hit subscribe so you know when we're live. And we've got about, oh gosh, 150 other tooltips on here that are
I think it's
great.
more than that by now, but it's,
Yeah,
yeah.
all kinds of things. We've been at this for a while. So yeah, take a look at the tooltips that are behind us, as well as staying tuned for the ones that are coming up. And if
Mhm.
you have an idea for a tooltip, let us know. But if you've got a go-to tool for wax carving that you like, please add it to the comments below so that we can share it with other people as well.
Absolutely.
All right.
All right.
Thanks. We'll see you guys next week for Tool Tip Tuesday. Bye.
Bye.